Just kidding.
2.1, call to order. We'll call the Paris Union High School District Special Board Meeting to order at 5 o'clock. 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on agendized items. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you, ma'am. 4.1, curriculum, public hearing for local control accountability plan and annual update for 2025-26. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the local control accountability plan and annual update for 2025-2026?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia on the first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Sorry about that. Okay, so the public hearing regarding local control accountability plan annual update for 2025-2026 is now open at 5:02 p.m. Educational Services will do a presentation for us.
Excuse me. Good evening. Dr. Roush, our superintendent, President Campos, Trustee Garcia, Trustee Hall, and Trustee Anaya. My name is Lindsay Chavez. I'm the Director of Learning Support Services, and I'm excited to update you on our local control accountability plan. Today's meeting is to just do a review of our goals and our progress on our goals for this school year. I'll do just a quick overview of how we developed the LCAP at the very beginning in preparation for board adoption on June 18th. If there are any comments or input today from yourself or our community partners, then we're able to add that into the LCAP. All right, today we're going to be just going over the vision and mission of the Paris Union High School District and how that ties into the LCAP. We're going to discuss the 4 main LCAP goals, talk about some progress highlights that we have, some of our challenges and our opportunities for growth, and then also discuss our expenditures from the LCAP. All right. First and foremost, our local control accountability plan is guided by the vision and mission of the Paris Union High School District. What is truly remarkable about the LCAP is that it puts our vision and mission into action. It makes it into real, you can see it tangible at the school sites, happening and improving student achievement. So the LCAP is a 3-year strategic plan that's aligned to our local control funding formula. It reflects the district priorities. It also supports continuous improvement at our school sites, and it ensures that all of our students have access to reach their greatest level of success. The LCAP, the most important component of the LCAP is the collaboration, that it is developed with, in collaboration with our community partners, our educational partners, our Board of Education, our cabinet, our staff, and our students, as well as the parents. Our current LCAP is for the years 2024 through 2027, and we are just concluding the first year of the LCAP, and we're moving into year 2. Now, the main goal of the LCAP is to increase or improve services. When our local control funding formula determines our total funding for the school district, which Ms. Raines will go over in a little bit, we do have supplemental and concentration funds that are determined based on the number of students that we have who are classified as socioeconomically disadvantaged or English learners, and also foster youth. And based on the high concentration of those students, we receive additional funding to supplement the services that we provide. And this is to ensure that all of our students have access to all of our great programs that we have here at the Paris Union High School District, and have the same opportunities for success as their peers. The LCAP truly shapes the Paris Union High School District vision, your board priorities, and our superintendent's priorities. It operationalizes equitable access for all of our students, and it's based on these 4 guiding principles. We want to ensure that the LCAP and the actions and the goals that we have are what's best for kids. We want to make sure that it's aligned to our district priorities, of course that we're compliant with our state requirements, and fostering public trust. I've said it over and over again in this setting and also when we speak privately, but we are dealing with public funds, and when we are entrusted with such a huge responsibility, we have a duty of stewardship and ensure that those public funds are truly being directed towards the needs of our students and supporting achievement for all of our students. All right, now our superintendent's district priorities, the 5 pillars, which were developed actually after this LCAP was approved and adopted last June. However, we want to make sure that moving forward, our actions and our goals are aligned with our district priorities. Teaching and learning, supporting and ensuring that all of our students are college and career ready, providing the systems of support and systems to support not just for our students, but for our staff as well, so that they have the tools that they need in order to do the things that they do best and work with our students. And that's for all of our staff, our teaching staff and our classified staff, because everybody that's within our school site, everybody that works in the school district, everyone is an educator. Everyone has opportunities to support students and help our students learn and grow. We also have a priority for management and fiscal responsibility, integrity, honesty, and transparency. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about in this collaboration that we have together is continually working together, improving our relationship and ensuring that we have transparency in all of our expenditures and our goal planning. Community engagement is another one of our district priorities, and developing trusted relationships based on mutual respect and understanding, ensuring that the voices in our school district and in our community are heard and are reflected in the LCAP. One of the things that we want to ensure is that we have meaningful engagement with our educational partners. And one of the things that I see that excites our educational partners is when they provide input or have a suggestion, and then they see it come to life. They see it in the LCAP. They see it happening at our school sites, and that encourages more input, more feedback, more involvement, and we want to continue that because we are partners in supporting our students in their education. And then finally, leadership, organizational unity, ensuring that we have a shared leadership model and that we're building capacity within our systems. All right, within our local control accountability plan, or the LCAP, we have 4 main goals, and then we have an additional 5th goal, which is the equity multiplier. Now, to keep it really simple, and this is how I always look at our goals. Our first goal is always going to be our academic goal. That is supporting students in achievement in English language arts and mathematics. Our second goal is supporting students with college and career preparedness. LCAP goal 3 is our student well-being. It supports safety. It supports our wellness centers and really ensuring that we have an environment so that students are able to learn and achieve. And then our LCAP goal 4 is community engagement, strengthening those community partnerships, our homeschool relationships, and our communications. Now, LCAP goal 5 is special, and it is a new goal that we have in this LCAP. And the reason why it's new is because it was determined that Paris Lake High School and Scholar Plus, they have greater needs in terms of college and career preparedness, in terms of their academic achievement. And so we were actually allocated additional funds to specifically support our students at Paris Lake and at our Scholar Plus, which will be the future Inland Online Academy. And so those funds are directed specifically for those 2 schools, and we, as a compliance and as a requirement for receiving those funds, we have to write a specific goal to support just those schools and the students in those schools. All right, so let's talk about some data that supports our LCAP. We use the data to monitor our progress within the LCAP, and these are just some of our highlights. We saw an increase in several key areas. In our graduation rate specifically, we saw a decline in our suspension rate, we saw an increase in our English language arts data, our mathematics, and our college and career indicators. That is telling us that we're certainly moving in the right direction, right? We're doing all the right things, and we're definitely having that forward momentum. However, one of the things I do want you to take a look at is that although we increase, and one of my examples is mathematics there, although we increased by 12 points, you can see that we're still 126.2 points below standard. So we still have a ways to go, right? So that's telling us that although we are seeing progress, and we are seeing some success in some of our actions within our goals, that we have to continue those things. And we may even have to increase. We may have to add some more supports or think outside the box and add different or implement different ideas and supports to help our students out. Okay. Another thing I want you to take a look at is within that data, you're going to see that under red, you're going to see certain numbers there. So if you take a look at English language arts, it says under red there's 5, the number 5. That means there's 5 student demographic groups that are still scoring in the red. Now, in the LCAP, we are required that any of our student demographic groups that are struggling and are in the red or orange, we have to have specific goals and action items that are directed towards how we're going to address this need and how we are going to support these students. This is taken directly from our California School Dashboard, which is a public document. It is linked in this presentation right there. And another thing that I want to highlight too that we added here is our parent and family engagement. We've done a really good job at having opportunities for our families to engage within our Parent Engagement Leadership Institute, our ELAC, DLAC, our APAC, our Coffee with Admin, our school site councils. However, we are seeing the same faces and the same involvement, the same parents, and we want to expand that outreach, and we want more of our families to feel included and to know that they have a voice and that they can be more involved in education of their students. And so we want to continue and growing that area. We do have some challenges. We did see a decline in some areas. We saw a decline in our chronic absentee. It continues to be a challenge within our district. That's why we've launched this laser focused attention and supporting our students and providing resources so that we can get them to school so that they can learn and achieve. And so we've written in some specific action items to support attendance, to recover attendance, and also to recover enrollment within our school district. We're taking a look at some of the different programs that we offer, and we're looking at rebranding some of our alternative education programs, such as our online academy, and really expanding that so more of our students have access to those opportunities. We also are seeing a decline in our English learner progress, and so this is an area that we want to pay very close attention to, and we want to be intentional in really implementing our supports for our English learners. Now, when we take a look at our math achievement, we have 3 particular demographic groups that are still scoring in the red: our African American students, our foster youth, and our long-term English learners. As you can see, that although they have maintained, they grew just by a small percentage. We're still seeing a great distance from standard, and so we want to ensure that our LCAP is addressing those needs and that we have action items and we have plans to support these students. One of the things that I like to challenge our sites, and my experience as a school site principal when we were taking a look at our demographics, is taking a look at the number of the students. We have 192 students under our African American demographic out of 11,000 students. We can name 192 students. We can have one-on-one meetings with 192 students and provide supports and really have that targeted intervention and one-on-one help. And so that's a challenge that we have for our school sites, is how can we really target the interventions that we provide. Now, in addition, we have 2 specific student groups where we have been identified for differentiated assistance, particularly with our homeless population, or what we call our McKinney-Vento, because 3 areas are struggling in the red or orange. So we have English language arts, mathematics, and chronic absentee. And so because homeless population, also our long-term English learners for ELA, math, and college and career indicators, that because those have been identified for differentiated assistance, we are required to have specific actions and supports to target these demographic groups and support in these areas. One of the ways that we're promoting college and career preparedness for long-term English learners is really providing those opportunities for these students to participate in our CTE pathway programs and our AP programs, and those different indicators that support this area for college preparedness. All right. Now, based on our comprehensive needs assessment and also based on the input and the feedback that we've received throughout the school year from our educational partners, from the different opportunities and meetings that we had at the school sites and the parent advisory committee meetings, as well as our superintendent student advisory groups. These are some of the areas that we want to continue for next school year. We want to continue more targeted interventions for our students who are failing or at risk of failing. We want to expand our first best instruction practices for our teachers and provide that professional development so that they have the tools that they need to support their students in the classroom. We want to enhance our professional development, particularly for our English, our ELD teachers and our special education teachers, so that they have the latest research-based strategies to implement in their classroom and support students. In terms of goal 2 for college and career, we want to increase access to our CTE pathway completion and our enrollment in our dual enrollment with MSJC, and then increase the support we have for college planning. And we also want to focus on supporting our counselors and really increasing their capacity so that they're able to support students in terms of college and career advising. Now, for student well-being, we've certainly put a lot of attention and a lot of careful thought and intentionality in terms of building a robust wellness center program and our supports in that area. We are having new coordinators to support chronic absenteeism. Our coordinator of mental health support is also really building the capacity of our wellness teams to continue to help students in their wellness. And then LCAP Goal 4 is community engagement, and we want to ensure that we're creating systems to gather community feedback, and so that we have a consistent conversation with our families, and where we're seeking their input and really reflecting their feedback and their input within our LCAP. One of my philosophies is that any opportunity we have to engage with our parents, whether it's them visiting the school, asking questions, even if they're calling because they have a concern, that is an opportunity to receive feedback from our families. Or when we're at a football game and we're talking with families, that is another opportunity to have feedback. So it doesn't always have to be a formal meeting like this. It doesn't always have to be a survey that we send out. That anytime we can have meaningful engagement with our families is an opportunity for us to learn and grow. And that, I believe that any feedback, positive or negative, is an opportunity for us to learn and get better as a school district. One of the things that we've heard over and over again from our families is that we want to continue with our day pack. We have APAC, our African American Parent Advisory Committees, at all of our school sites. However, this school year we didn't have a district African American Parent Advisory Committee, and there has been an interest in really bringing that back. And also an interest in bringing a special education parent advisory committee so that those parents' voices are heard, and ensuring that we're providing the appropriate supports within our LCAP that is truly reflecting on the needs from what the parents are telling us that their students are needing. Now, I want to also add that we're not just using the funding, the supplemental and the concentration funds to support these goals. We also use different sources of funding, our state and federal programs, our title funding, the different grants that we have. That's in addition to the funds that we have within the LCAP. And that those are funds that are additional targeted supports that we can use to supplement these programs that we have. Okay, so For the school year, our total local control funding formula was $154.9 million, and of that, we had 34.1 for supplemental and concentration funds, which is fully directed towards the needs of our high students. And so that is what we use to allocate within the goals that we have, the 4 different goals. And this is the breakdown of those goals. For LCAP Goal 1, for our academic goal, we spent about $8.3 million. For Goal 2, college and career, $14.6 million. Student well-being, $10.3 million. LCAP Goal number 4, community engagement, about $458,000. Now, we talked about that special goal, Goal 5, that we added this year because we received additional funding for the equity multiplier, and that's an additional $800,000. When you take a look at our goals, you can really see where we placed our priority areas. And so we placed our priority with our college and career initiatives and supporting our students there, and also with student well-being, which encompasses our safety, in addition to our wellness resources. But as you can see, we didn't spend as much in academics. However, moving forward, I know that based on our superintendent's priorities and also our district priorities, we want to start building a more robust academic intervention program and helping our students really achieve academically and improving those scores for ELA and math. But not just the scores, not just the test scores, but just their overall achievement so that they're able to be more successful post-secondary after they graduate. And so one of the things that we want to take a look at that we do need your feedback on is how can we increase our supports and address our academic needs based on what our data is telling us. All right. This is the budget overview that we provide for our parents. It is lovingly called the BOP. I actually have a hard time calling it the BOP. I still just call it the budget. And so again, it shows you how much was adopted in 2024, how much we spent, and then what percentage of that was our supplemental and our concentration grant. This will give you an idea of what we spent in 24-25. A majority of our cost did go to that homeschool transportation as well as instructional technology. Those were the priority areas that were supporting our academic achievement. We have district administration costs in here. We also have our ELD intervention sections and ELD supports and materials. Our indirects, as we had discussed in an earlier meeting, are just those required, oh my gosh, the word escapes me. Our fixed cost, that's what I was thinking about.
Fixed cost,
Our
but it's a fixed rate applied to all.
Yes, thank you, Candace. All right, I was so close, it just left my mind. All right, here we go. This is what we have planned for 25-26 in terms of LCAP Goal 1. However, what I do want to share with you is that this is a living document. So the LCAP that we provided for you today, that is going to go up for your approval on June 18th, is a living, breathing document that we can continue to adapt and change throughout the following year. And the reason why we may have to make adjustments is because we're going to continue to monitor progress throughout the year. And if we're finding that there's a certain action item that isn't as successful and we may need to make an adjustment or an amendment, then we might have to redirect funds. We might have to change an action item. But my promise to you is that before anything changes, we are going to come back here in the boardroom and I'll present it to you and we'll have a conversation. And I'm going to ask for your feedback and your input. And I'm going to let you know, hey, originally we approved this and we planned this, but it's not working so well. We need some support and some ideas on how we can amend that and fix that. And then if we're making any changes or changing our allocations, and we're going to work on it together as a team in collaboration. We're going to certainly ask for input and feedback in order to make that happen. Okay? This is going to be a true partnership for us because this is a very big responsibility, and you have the voice of your trustee area, you have the voice of our staff members, and so we want to make sure that we're really providing those supports. All right. LCAP Goal 2, our college and career indicator goal. As you can see, a big chunk of it is really increasing that instructional day. That's the 7th period that we have. We have our CTE contracts that are provided, that's from this goal. We also support our AVID program from this goal, as well as our high school counselors also. Okay, so those are just some of the big expenditures that we spent in 24-25. We kept it the same, pretty similar for LCAP Goal 2, but again, when things change, there are some priorities that change. We're taking a look at some different resources, particularly for AVID, and if the funding will change for that or decrease, we want to see how we can really be responsible with our spending, and if there are different opportunities that will continue to support our students, but maybe cost us a little money, less money, then we're gonna really pursue those opportunities. All right. We have our Goal 3. This is our safety, positive learning environments. This supports our SROs. This supports our BAR program, stipends, extracurriculars for our athletics, any consultants that we have. This all comes out of LCAP Goal 3. Okay. It also supports our MTSS counselors, some of our wraparound services. Our district nurses and psychologists are also out of this goal. All right. This is similar to what we have budgeted for Goal 3 for this upcoming school year. And again, we're excited to work with you and to receive your feedback and input in order to see if this is really the best use of our funds. All right. And then we have Goal 4, which I know it looks smaller. This is our community engagement. Not that we don't prioritize community engagement. We are very lucky in that we have other sources of funding and title funding that support this goal as well. One in particular is our Title I funds that we receive. There's actually a percentage of our Title I funds that have to go, it's a compliance piece, that have to be spent on community engagement. So that's why we see a little bit less here, because we're able to supplement that with another source. All right. And then finally, I talked with you about Goal 5, which is specifically for Paris Lake High School and our Scholar Plus Online School, which will soon be rebranded to the Inland Online Academy. And for this school year, those funds were used to really support wellness in terms of our social worker, our counselors, and also providing the satellite campuses at each of our comprehensive school sites. Now for next school year, I'm going back to our equity multiplier here. For next school year, I understand that there's an interest in really providing additional supports academically for our students at Paris Lake, and also expanding our online academy so that we can increase access for all of our students. And so we're going to be asking you about redirecting some of these equity multiplier funds so that we can really support the growth of those two campuses. All right. These are the different parent engagement opportunities that we have throughout the year with our DLAC, our parent advisory committees, our school site council. Again, we have heard from several of our parent groups that they want to bring back the District African American Advisory Committee, and then also our special education advisory committees so that those voices can be heard. But like I told you before, we want to ensure that we have a continuous loop, a system for receiving feedback for our community. Not just through surveys, but through authentic conversations that we have with our families. And I don't want it to be limited to our families as well. We really need this to branch out and reach out to our greater community, our chambers of commerce, our city government, because everybody has something at stake, right? If our district succeeds and continues to support students, then that's certainly something that benefits the whole community. And so we want to make sure that they have their voices heard and are reflected within our LCAP as well. Okay, and so now I just wanted to ask you, and if there's any comments from anybody in our meeting here today about what resonates with you about our plan. What are some ideas that you have, additional supports or services that you believe could benefit our students? And really, what are some more meaningful ways that we can deepen this collaboration and engage with our community and yourself and our staff? How can we continue to work together to ensure that we're really improving academic achievement for our students and really providing those supports that not just our students need, but our teachers need as well. And so I want to continue this conversation and also ask you that we continue this throughout the school year, and that it's not just limited to a board update in February and then another board update in June, but that we're able to really continue this conversation. I can share with you our progress on our goals. I can share with you some data, and then you can talk with us about what you're hearing, within the community. And I also want you to know that, like, when we're receiving your feedback, that we're going to implement that and that we're going to put that into the LCAP, right? And that your input is very valuable, and that it's important that we work together to support our students and to really, really help our whole district succeed. Okay. Following this, we are going to have our board adoption for the LCAP on June 18th. That's going to give us an opportunity between now and that time, should there be any additional feedback or adjustments or any changes that we need to make for next school year, then we're able to make those edits. And then again, to continue to involve our educational partners and to really improve our system for implementing this LCAP, but also for ensuring that our actions and goals are truly meeting the needs of our students. All right, and with that concludes the public hearing that I have, my presentation, for this public hearing. Do you have any questions?
Nothing that we didn't already ask.
The only one I have, and I was looking at all the numbers.
Yes.
Do we have a number on the LTELs?
You mean a specific student population number for our LTELs? Mr. Tippy, do you have a specific number?
Or just a total, or?
Yeah, just a total. Because when I was looking at some of the stuff, I know there's 1,500, 57 ELs, 14%. And then we have foster youth, and everything is lined out really well. I just didn't see anything when I was looking at the categories for the double red, and LTELs being one of them, just didn't have a number. I mean, if you have it, great. It's no big deal if you don't.
Yeah, so for the LP, the English Learner Progress Indicator, it's 139 for total, and then for the LTELs, it was 112.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with you today and to present the annual update for the LCAP. If you do have any further questions, please just let us know. And remember that we do have an opportunity to make any adjustments prior to the board adoption date on the 18th. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
thank you so much.
Okay. Are there any public comments?
No problem.
Thank you. The public hearing regarding local control accountability plan and annual update for 2025-2026 has been closed at 5:33. There is a motion by Trustee Garcia and a second by Trustee Hall to receive for review and consideration as a part of the first reading the local control and accountability plan annual update for the 2025-2026 school year. Upon a vote being please vote. Jumped one line ahead.
That's the part you need to add in the notes.
No, it's there.
Oh, is it?
Please
Please vote.
Okay. That's my fault. No, she did it. And you're on top of it.
Good job.
Okay. Upon vote being taken, the vote was 4 in favor and 1 absent. 4.2 business, public hearing regarding adoption of the 2025-2026 district budget. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments regarding the 2025-2026 district budget?
So move.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Trustee Hall. The 2025-2026 district budget public hearing is now open at 5:34. And Business Services will provide a presentation at this time.
Okay, well, I'm pleased to be standing before you to give what will be my last budget presentation, or my last presentation before this board. I don't know if that was a clap
No,
or
this is
around
the
or catch a fly there. I don't know how well timed that was, or wasn't. All right, so before I begin, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of so many people within the district. As is the case with the putting together the LCAP supplemental and concentration portion, there's a lot of people whose voices are heard in terms of putting the entire district budget together. I know the principals aren't here, but many of the directors are. And we begin, sitting together in different capacities starting in February to start talking about all of the elements of the budget. Very similar to how Ms. Chavez talked about for the LCAP portion of the budget. But most specifically, while she's not here tonight, nor is she listening because this isn't a live audio, I know she'll listen later, I want to acknowledge the efforts of Mimi Capistrano, who's not with us tonight while she's out dealing with something very serious. And Nathan Kamara, who's sitting over here, who just moved mountains to get this budget ready and prepared with Mimi's absence. So thank you, Nathan, since you are sitting here. So with that, I will begin our public hearing presentation for the 25-26 budget. Like what Ms. Chavez said, this is an opportunity to provide feedback or suggestions. It's a living and breathing document. And so while we can't change a whole lot of what has happened, to date, we can change, going forward, decisions that we make today, affect tomorrow. So just keep that in mind and certainly ask questions, as I go along. Thank you. All right, so we are starting with our budget and financial cycle. You've seen this at first and second interim and at other times. So we are at the very left with the adopted budget for 25-26. But you will note that we are presenting a budget to your proposed budget before the state adopts their final budget, right? And so we are doing that. If you go back to the end of the chart on the right, we are doing that based on the information within the governor's May revision. Any significant changes that are included within the state budget that cause the district to need to revise its budget before first interim, which as you move along there, we would bring that, or someone will bring that back to you as what's called a 45-day revision to the budget. And if they don't do that with 45-day revision, you're not required to unless you change the budget, they will do that with first interim. Just before first interim, the way that we end, the way we close our books for 24-25 will be brought forward to you with the unaudited actuals. So just so you know where we are point in time. So budget adoption is required by the Ed Code. The governing boards shall adopt a budget on or before the 1st of July for each year. This is part of the process, having a public hearing that's separate than the budget adoption, which is June 18th. The budget has to then be filed with Riverside County Office of Education no later than 5 days after the board's adoption, or by July 1st, 2025, whichever comes first. Now the budget has to be prepared on the state required forms. It has to include estimated actuals for this year that we're ending now, the budget year, which is 25-26, and then 2 additional years, which is called the 2 out years. I will say, similar to what Lindsay said about the back pages of the LCAP, they're not fun to read. They're not reader friendly, and that's what the state required forms are. They're called the SACS documents, or the Standardized Account Code Structure. And so we put this together so that you have a little bit more reader friendly version, of the budget, because nobody wants to read. We don't, Nathan and I don't want to read through 150 pages of small print in those SACS documents. So as I mentioned, you're required to do a public hearing, and the budget was made available to the public for review on May 28th and May 29th, and that's required to be in advance of the public hearing, and that was advertised as well to the public. So I first want to touch very quickly on the California state budget. There wasn't a whole lot to report of significance in the May revise, but I wanted to include a few slides from the School Services of California presentation, just so you have those later for reference should you want to go and read a little bit more there. But I do want to mention the May revise uses a combination of reductions, borrowing, and funding shifts, and triggers reductions to address the current budget problem that's at the state level. but education, Prop 98 is largely insulated from that. So I wanted to point that out, but that's not going to affect anything that we're talking about as proposed in the May revision. COLA is also fully funded at 2.3%. We'll talk a little bit about COLA a little bit more later. There are some risks to the state budget and to the state economy. I do want to note that President Trump has proposed in the federal budget that he will maintain Title I and special education funding, but does cut adult education and Title III and migrant ed. However, the federal budget, different than a state budget, on a federal fiscal year cycle, so that will be 3 months behind the state budget with the federal fiscal year of October 1. And then I wanted to put this chart in there just so that you can see Proposition 98 funding over time, both made up of state revenues and the Prop 98 minimum guarantee, and then that green line there is statewide attendance, bless you, over time. And then one last quick slide from School Services of California, only because this is a real hot topic right now, and that's insurance costs. Insurance costs are rising very rapidly. On the property and liability side, our rates are going up. This is statewide, right? Wildfires are a cause of that. AB 218, which is the sexual abuse and molestation, or SAM, claims are causing, this is districts across the state. And what I wanted to point out there from School Services is, which this information actually comes from FCMAT, Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, and then Keenan and Associates, that LEAs, which means local education agency or school district, can expect at least a 20% premium increase. When we move to the workers' compensation increases, you can see that piece there, 5 to 10%. That's both claim severity, duration, that's also the cost of claims, because generally they're medical claims, right? And the cost of medical is increasing. And so when we look at how we built our budget, I wanted to have this slide in there for you as a backdrop to why we included the insurance costs that we have. Okay, and then I wanted to put one more slide in there just as a summary. Everything on this slide is in the proposal, but it is not in the district's budget. So I want to make that really clear. So if these things come to fruition with the final state budget act, then the district would need to decide what we're going to do with these funds, because this is just a proposal at this time. So the main categories are the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. And if you may recall that was originally proposed and then cut. And so the May revision proposes to restore those cut dollars, okay? Now, in order to spend those cut dollars, this year, the budget year that we're finishing, the enacted budget, the law, made several changes to how we can use those LREDG funds that would begin in 25-26. So the funds we already know, and then the restored funds if they come to fruition. And in order to use those funds, it's the same as I was telling you earlier about the equity multiplier, you have to conduct a new student needs assessment, and you have to include those expenditures within the LCAP. So that would then be for 26-27, or adjusted at a mid-year. Remember, Lindsay talked about there's a February mid-year cycle. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If you start hearing more about that, you can say, well, we heard about that from Candace back at the public hearing. So the May revision also includes the new student support and professional development discretionary block grant. And I want to focus in on that word discretionary, because it is allowed, just like the arts and music instructional materials discretionary block grant. It's discretionary. There's an intended purpose for those funds, but it leaves it up to the local education agency, the school district, the school boards, to decide how to use those monies. But it's a one-time block grant. It was reduced in the May revise from the January proposal, but it largely remains in its original design. And it's, again, those funds are fully flexible, allowing us to address rising costs, and those funds would be available one time, not ongoing, but one time through 28-29. So that's something else to keep in mind as well. And then there's other one-time funds that are proposed for literacy, educator investments, including supporting teachers through the educator pipeline. So just keep those in mind. Those could be on the horizon once we see that final state budget act. Okay, so now let's get into the good stuff, the proposed district budget. So The district budget is a set of multi-year projections. Multi-year projections are required by Assembly Bill 1200 and 2756. All of our projections, they're anchored in reliable information as of the date of the projection. A multi-year projection, it's not a prediction, it's not a crystal ball. Things are going to change from what we present today to by the end of the year, and certainly in 3 years from now. They will change, like I said, as the underlying factors change. So Dr. Rouse talked earlier about, and I'm going to show you the number in a little bit, that our revenues are increasing because of those laser-focused strategies to get students in school more. And that's the financial piece of it, that's not the instructional piece of it, because there's two sides of that equation, right? And so when we made our original projections, we didn't count on those students at the trend rates that we were seeing in the past. We now have a different trend of students attending school more often, so that multi-year projection and assumption will change. That doesn't mean the projection was wrong before, and the underlying scenarios change. Now, because they change, they have to be well documented so that we can track on the fiscal services side what changed and why, so that we can explain those things to our stakeholders. Make sense? All right. Next slide, and I know I just had one there and they're about multi-year projections, but this was right out of the school services May revise, and so I just wanted to include it for more background information. Those multi-year projections that we're going to present to you in just a minute, they're results of mathematical calculations for future years. There's a number of local data points that we're looking at. Those local data points are things like enrollment, ADA, how do we staff each of our schools, how do we staff our classrooms. Those decisions that have already been made, those are decisions that are made and documented within the collective bargaining agreements by different board action, that sort of thing. Those are all going to be reflected in the multi-year projections. Again, multi-years are not predictions, they're not forecasts, they're not crystal balls, and perhaps most importantly, they're not measuring sticks for wrongness, right? We don't want to stand up here and say, but 3 years ago, Candace, you said 24-25 would end this way. Well, we have all the documented changes we made from that point in time to this point in time, and why. It's not Nathan and Mimi and I sitting in a room going, let's present this number this time, right? Makes sense? All right, so now let's get into a little bit more of the details. So now, we have like 22,000 funding lines in our budget. I'm not going to present them all to you. I'm going to try to capture all of them in a summary format. So we're going to deal with revenues first, and these are the major assumptions that we make. Now, when I was talking in cabinet this morning, Dr. Rouse said, would you please underline the word assumptions there? I want to make sure everybody understands those are assumptions. And did you?
That's correct. And I just want to add, I told you to underline it and highlight it too, because this is so important to me. I have received input from the board, right? And I was on top of you during one of the last meetings, asking, what about that money magically appearing and just show up, and a few months or one semester before, we have the budget with this. Those are assumptions, right? So if that continues to happen, that's what we are projecting. So this is so important. So I don't know if you can modify it so you can highlight it, right? Because it's continuously this input from the board saying about the money magically appear. It's not that. It's that there is sometimes, like in this case, and we are going to see, this is wonderful what we are going to see in the next few minutes, right? How the laser focus approach and the strategic approach that we have developed on attendance has given a big impact, right? So, and last semester, we didn't have that. We were not acting upon that.
Yeah, Nathan's smarter than me. He figured out.
That's okay. Yeah, but just the fact of clarifying those assumptions is so important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Always surround yourself with smarter people than you. That's the tip of the day. Okay, James was telling Soji something there. Okay, so these are our major revenue assumptions. So again, when we build our budget, we're doing so on a set of assumptions. We're going to talk about the revenue assumptions there right now. So we're ending 24-25 with COLA of 1.07. We're projecting, because this was statutory COLA, 2.3% COLA for next year. I do want to point out though that the projected COLA for 25-26 just 1 year ago today, when we were standing here presenting the budget, which would have been the first out year in the budget, was 3.29%. So almost a full 1% decline in 1 year. So you can see the COLA projections for the out years. You can see our enrollment projections, 24-25, 10,801 students. That is a decline in enrollment from 23-24. And so we are projecting to continue that decline because that's what the trend tells us. When we look at the details of our enrollment history in a little bit, you'll see we just plummeted this year, and Dr. Rouse and the team have a laser focus on Operation Enrollment Recovery in addition to attendance recovery that hopefully will bring in more students and therefore no revenue. But we talked earlier, hope is not a plan, right? And so we have to build the budget conservatively based on these projections. So you heard me mention that enrollment was down from 23-24 as we sealed up 24-25. However, here's the good news, ADA is higher than 23-24. So we grew in ADA and we declined in enrollment. So that's good news, bad news, right? Our ADA, bless you, as a percentage of enrollment is 90.34%, and that's a huge increase this year from last year. A big part of that is an error was found in the student information system where Saturday school, the code that the sites use for ADA recovery, so they're doing all this work, but the code wasn't actually capturing that ADA, so then we on the fiscal side weren't capturing the revenue. That has now been fixed. We're going to go backwards a couple of years and refile our P2. That'll be new one-time, money. So I mean, that's terrible that happened, but we're fixing that.
Is that guaranteed we'll get that money?
It's a guarantee so long as the auditors will have to audit it, and then the county has to accept, which they already have said that they will, opening up the window to re-report it. So we've got all the ducks in a row. We just have to wait for the window to open this summer, and then it's audited, and then we'll get it next spring's principal apportionment. So it'll be delayed, but it'll be coming to us.
But what Trustee Garcia asked is really important. So we are going to present, and as a matter of fact, we talked about that when I asked when the window is going to be open so we can present that.
Yes.
And you mentioned July 1st.
June, it's sometime in June, July.
So
They'll
this
tell
month,
us.
it can be this month.
Could be
Yeah,
this month,
it
it could be
this
July,
month. Okay.
but in order, we have to produce the documents, wait for the auditors to
Yeah.
audit it, and then we'll ask for the window to be open.
Okay, so as soon as that is submitted and the window open, we are going to let you know. And we're talking about roughly for this year, $700,000, right?
So yeah, but that's for this year, which
That's
the
for
window's
this year.
already open.
Uh-huh.
It's about $300,000 total that we'll receive because one of the years, so okay, let me back up a minute. For revenue, for LCFF revenue, ADA funded, we get funded on the higher of one of three things: the current year ADA, the prior year ADA, or the average of the 3 prior years. So for this year, because remember our ADA is higher, we're going to get funded on a current year. One of those 2 years that we have to go back is funded off of prior year. So unless we happen to exceed higher than that year that it's basing it on, but it's still important that we go through the process of claiming that P2 because that new higher number, even though we're not going to get paid on one of the 2 years for that year, it will help us in the next years.
Right.
So that will be important.
Okay.
Okay? So lower enrollment, higher ADA, and we have budgeted in the budget years and both of the out years to maintain that 90.34. And I'm sorry, Dr. Rouse and I got to co-presenting here and I didn't finish my earlier thought. So that higher ADA to enrollment as a percentage or that capture rate, a lot of that is the Saturday school, but a lot of that is also Mr. Adkins here. Oh, I thought I saw him walk in. Okay, somebody tell him, Mr. Adkins and the team from Ed Services, and none of our school sites are here right now, but they've done a really good job of amping up. So it's not just claiming what we didn't claim, it's also they've had a laser focus Granted, it was done more than halfway through the year, but imagine with the gains that we're seeing this year now
Absolutely.
translated to a full year next year and the year after. So hopefully my number is low, and even if we have the same enrollment, we'll have higher ADA because we'll have a higher capture rate. Does that make sense?
I think that hopefully
400,000.
it will be.
Yeah.
Hope is not a plan, but I'll give you this one.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll
give
talk
you
about
this one. Okay, so our unduplicated percentage, that's calculated as for funding purposes on a 3-year rolling average. So you can see the factor that we're using there. And again, these are why these are documented so that we know each reporting cycle what we're using and why. We've got our lottery there for you for revenue, unrestricted and restricted. That's a per ADA basis, our mandated block grant. And then, although it says not included, I did want just to continue that learning recovery restoration if it comes in as proposed, and then the new discretionary block grant, that would be revenue as well. Okay, any questions on revenue before I move on? Okay, expenditures, which Nathan highlighted for us as well there. Thank you, Nathan. So, these are just the major categories. So every single year, and I think I mentioned this at the second interim, we go to bed on June 30th and we wake up on July 1st, and the costs for our employee groups, even if we don't, give any kind of compensation increases, they are higher from one fiscal year to the next. The reason they are higher is a number of factors, but a large category is our employees get step increases. Our teachers can move over column increases. My daughter in another district just finally is going to move over to the far right, and so yay. But those cost school districts money. As a percentage of salary, you can see the percentage there in the first line, and then the dollar amount including the fixed costs that are associated with them in the next line. So you can see that's a big chunk every single year, and that's without even sitting down at the bargaining tables, right? That's one of those. It's automatic. It's one of those decisions I mentioned on the multi-year. That's a local decision because it's in the CBA, and it's in the CBA in every district in some fashion. We also have to look at our STRS and our PERS employee rates. So in the spring, CalSTRS and CalPERS set the rates, for the next fiscal year. STRS has been the same for a while now. PERS, this will be the first time that in my recollection, you can see between 24-25 and 25-26, PERS is decreasing. So we actually have a little bit of a savings for 1 year, and I'm going to show that again in a different slide, different format, statewide. Health and welfare increases on a year-to-year basis. Some of that is driven by the collective bargaining agreement. Some of that is driven by decisions made at the bargaining table, and then obviously brought, with the board's authority, of course, and then brought to the board for approval and ratification. The next line I have in here is another factor that's a big one this year and was last year in 24-25 as well, is our certificated full-time equivalencies that are overstaffed. So we started out the 24-25 school year overstaffed with a number less than 14 FTEs because that is because we thought we were going to grow in enrollment when we in fact declined. So we didn't have a choice by the time school starts and we're in August, but to retain those 14 individuals. We have no choice there. We are going into the 25-26 year, again, with the enrollment that's projected, overstaffed by 8. And I know that the board had that decision, in front of them, and you opted not to reduce force there. And I'm not criticizing that decision. I want to make that very clear. But my job is to calculate the impact of that so that we have it in the budget accurately and that we're very transparent with that. You can see that cost then calculates out into the out years, and it actually goes up both in dollar amounts and in FTEs. You might ask yourself why, but if you remember that we're projecting enrollment to go down, that means year after year we will need less and less teachers if the board were to decide to what's called right-sizing your staff for the current student enrollment, the current projected student enrollment. So that's just to be aware that those costs are within your budget. Now, could those costs change? Could a number of teachers retire and we don't fill those positions through attrition? Yes, of course, but this is what we're budgeting for now.
And since you said that we're co-presenting, I will.
Yes. Uh-oh, what did I do to myself?
No. I would like to add, because our commitment is a full transparency, not only with the board, with our community also, right, and everybody. So the 8 extra teachers that we pulled that item 2
Right.
months ago, right, it would cost $1.4 million. But the commitment also was from the associations to work with us to bring the ADA up, right, to recover that money. So they are not here, both associations, and I want to say thank you to Cynthia and Jason and all the educators, because they are stepping up to that. They are being very supportive. And hopefully, those 11.6 and 13.3 for 26, 27, and 27, 28, they can be lower without having to lay off teachers, because the enrollment recovery that all of our educators are committed to have stronger programs in that marketing campaigns that we are strategically designing is going to bring more students.
Yes, good job, co-presenter. The last 2 lines that I want to highlight there, pretty much everything else in our 4,000s and our 5,000s book supplies operating expenditures, unless we have a reliable source for some other factor to project its increase year after year and in the budget, we use consumer price index, and so you can see that there. One major exception to that is insurance costs. So you can see our insurance costs, because that's why I showed the slide earlier. They went up 17% in the year that we're closing out. We're projecting them to go up 22% next year and 25% each of the years out. Is that the exact right number? Nope, it is not, but it is approximately right. And so that is what we've used to build the budget. Other things we didn't list up there, utilities, we don't use CPI for utilities, we look at historical, so we have 10% budgeted as an increase on a year-to-year basis in our out years for utilities, so that's just one example of another thing we wouldn't use CPI, but I promise to not go into 22,000 funding lines in the budget. Any questions on the major expenditure assumptions? All right. Okay, we said we would talk a little bit more about our enrollment and our ADA trends. And so you've seen this slide before. Mimi is our queen of making graphs, so she put this one together. And so you can see that the yellow bar in each of those fiscal years there was our enrollment. And look at how fast we were growing until we stopped growing. And we didn't just stop and go flat. We declined, and so we're projecting that to continue to decline at, again, the 1% that I mentioned. And so enrollment with an ADA capture rate that's consistent is still a hit to the budget. But then we also have a capture rate that is not recovering back to pre-pandemic levels. That also impacts the budget. So those 2 things are when you hear Dr. Arauz talk about the laser focus on attendance and the laser focus on enrollment. There's the data to support the why. And that's the fiscal piece, not the instructional piece.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Lindsay did a little bit of this, and she did a great job telling you about how the LCFF is calculated, but let me assign some numbers to that for you. So purposes of this illustration, we're going to focus on the right-hand side column there, grades 9 through 12. Most of the same factors will apply to 7-8 other than the grade spat adjustment. So we start with, so when we're projecting for next year, or when we're calculating, we're not projecting at this point, we're calculating for next year. We are starting with last year's base grant per ADA, $12,144, adding that COLA of 2.3%. I mentioned before it's fully funded, so that's another $279 per student. That adjusts our base grant per ADA to $12,423. We get that grade span adjustment, 2.6% for the 9 through 12 kiddos, $323, and then we get our adjusted grade base grant per ADA, $12,746. Then we have a district-specific factor, our unduplicated pupil percentage for supplemental and for concentration, 1902 and 1626, and so for the first time, we have crept up over $16,000 on our per student amount. So now we have to start using an average of 16 instead of 15. We're always doing 15 on our calculator. So I wanted you to understand how that number is working for the fly move over to you, Mr. Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Ms. Reigns,
Yes.
that increase combined with the 65% is an increase, right? Combined with the increase on ADA and potential, well, at least right now with that automatically is going to have an increase in the.
Mm-hmm.
So
Really?
this won't change if ADA goes up, because this is the per student amount. So
Yeah.
this is the number we're gonna multiply by however many students we get to multiply, and hopefully that's a bigger number.
Yeah,
Yep.
is this for 25, 26?
This is for
or 26?
25, 26.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I thought it was this one.
Oh, sorry.
Additional.
Yeah, so we should probably put that in the title. Nathan will do that as we're talking. But yeah, it tells us 25, 26, but it's a little hidden there, you're right.
Okay.
Okay, so now we are going to look at our unrestricted general fund multi-year projection summary. Not too far here. So the first thing that we can see here is that we are moving from in 24-25, the first column with numbers, from deficit spending that we were projecting at second interim of $1.7 million to a net increase of $1.3 million, a net increase to our ending fund balance is what I mean when I say that. That's a $4 million difference, and we're going to discuss that in detail a little bit later, but I want to mention that about half of that is that increased revenue that we talked about with the ADA and the capture rate, and we talked about on slide 13 as well as additional interest revenue projections. I talked earlier about the how we're funded, whether it's current year or prior year or 3-year. And Joe, just in case you're interested, we are funded this year, as I mentioned before, in the current year. Next year, this is calculating for us to be funded on the prior year, and then the next 2 years, 3-year average. So we're taking advantage of whatever is most beneficial for the district, okay? So you can see we're projecting no longer to deficit spend this year, and again, I'm gonna go into some of those details. So we're projecting almost a $39 million ending fund balance this year that of course becomes our beginning fund balance next year. We're going to add all of our revenue sources, we're gonna subtract our contributions for total revenues next year of $138 million. We're gonna subtract all of our projected expenditures, and remember I went over those revenue and expenditures major assumptions, that's what's calculated here. To show that we're projecting to deficit spend next year by $2.9 million. Now remember, that was almost $8 million at second interim. And so that's a result, again, of that higher ADA rate as well.
Ms. Raines, and just to look at things in perspective and to make it clear for the board and our constituents, it's a huge increase this. We're not talking about $1,000, we're talking about millions of dollars.
Yes.
For a projected $4 million deficit spending for this year, we are at 1.3 on the green.
1.7 was the last
1.7.
projection. We went from 1.7
Yes,
negative
but
to
last
1.7.
semester at the beginning it was 4.
At
When
first
I-
interim.
when I
First
started,
interim, at
yes.
first interim, yes.
In the first
Yes.
interim was 4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So we're talking about $5.3 million
If you add
on
those.
that it was done by everybody in the district, all the staff, all the educators, and I want to just make it clear that it was a team effort, and I'm really proud of all of them.
And my co-presenter and I are throwing around a bunch of numbers here, and that is why it's so critical to document these numbers, which we do.
Yes.
So we can always look back and be, well, why was it that way at that time? Did we recognize this grant or that revenue or whatever?
Now, did you prepare a presentation about where those $5.3 million came from?
Yes.
Oh.
Two slides.
2 slides more?
2 more
Okay.
slides.
Sorry to go ahead.
No problem. Okay, so same slide, but the restricted general fund. So same concept here. You're seeing all of your revenues, your ending fund balance from one year becomes your beginning fund balance in the next year. When we look at our second to last line there, which is in this case deficit spending every single year, just like it was for the unrestricted general fund, that's our net increase or decrease to the ending fund balance. So you can see there's a larger deficit spending. This is pretty typical in restricted because you're spending a lot of times one-time dollars, or maybe you're receiving it in this year, you're planning for it, and then you're gonna spend it, here. But you can see that deficit amount, it doesn't go away, and so we have a problem to address in a couple of years on the restricted side as well, but it goes down pretty significantly. And that's why we want to show unrestricted and restricted separately, so you have that for you as well. Okay? All right. Now we are going to talk about 24-25 to answer Dr. Rao's question that he mentioned earlier. So what this is our 24-25 estimated actuals, and we're going to talk about the change in the fund balance. So if we look at, we're gonna work up to this, but if we start with looking at the number in the bottom right-hand corner, our ending fund balance from second interim is increasing by $3 million, okay? And so we're gonna talk generally and then on the next two slides more specifically about what that is, okay? So our revenue, you can see between second interim and estimated actuals, increased by $1.4 million. And again, we're gonna get more into the specifics of that. If we back up to first and second interim, you can see there was an increase there, and you probably remember the presentation at second interim where we had this exact same slide. And I'm not quizzing anybody here, but that was our interest revenue of $1.2 million. Our contributions is another significant change. We're projecting those to decrease by 1.1 million. Our expenditures don't really change significantly as a percentage of expenditures, but we are projecting those to decrease by 387,000. And again, that changes our net increase, in this case an increase to our ending fund balance of $3 million, and so then obviously it changes our fund balance. So now we're gonna break this down by revenue and then by expenditure so that we can see what those different categories look like. Okay, first, I'm on the wrong slide here. So first we want to talk about our LCFF revenue. And so we talked about that on actually a couple of earlier slides, but that's the net increase in our ADA and our capture rate. There's a small adjustment in there for our county operated programs that are also funded off of ADA. But the vast majority of that, approximately $750,000, is the increase in ADA and that capture rate, that laser focus on attendance in this case, not attendance and enrollment, okay? Interest revenue, we've continued to see high interest payments. Remember, that's something we don't have control over. All of our funds are held in the county treasurer, as are every other school district and anyone else that holds their funds. We're beholden to the total of all of those funds and how those funds are invested and how they perform. And so that's good news there. Seeing this consistency maintained in 2 years, we have budgeted for next year to maintain the same level of interest revenue on a percentage basis, but we've decreased it only by 20%. So just keep that in mind. I think that that's a fair assumption though. Okay. Hardly any change to our state revenue, but that is for mandated cost, that $2,000 there. Also hardly any change to other revenue, but nonetheless it's a category. Yes,
I've been asking for a long time, since I've been on the board, how much money do we have in safety credits? And I've never gotten a direct answer. Can you email that to the board later, please?
Yes, I did provide it in a weekly update a while back, but let me see how old that is first of all, and see if it's worthwhile to update it.
No, I appreciate that.
And then I'll put it in the weekly update, but maybe I'll also, if it's all right, Dr. Rouse, we can also email it out just so you have it in two places.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Absolutely. So it was provided.
It was,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just making sure that whenever we have a request, that we comply with those requests, right? So, and if it's a perception that it was not, then we just present it.
We'll fix it. We'll fix the perception, yeah.
Not a big deal.
Thank you.
So, okay, so our total revenues are changing to the good by almost $1.5 million, or a 0.9% variance. Our contributions, we're projecting that those are less of a fewer dollar amount contribution. I'm not saying that very well. Our contributions are projected to decrease, which is our local contribution to special education. And that's mainly a result of salary expenses that were saved in special education. Now, I would love to give credit to Kelly for this, our new special education director, but this is vacancies. So there are positions that need to be filled, but there's a lot of transition in the special education arena. And that's not only on the salary, like employee side, it's also on the consultant and the service providers as well, because the contracts that she has for outside agency, they also have trouble keeping those positions staffed. So the good news is when you adjust your revenue for those contributions, that is $2.6 million of the increase that I'm talking about, or a 1.93% change. Okay, one last variance slide and then we're going to move on to 25, 26. So a short summary of this slide is expenditures haven't changed by a whole lot. They've gone down actually 0.28%. When I say they've gone down, remember that's a projection for how we're going to end, this year. We have to get through getting through the end of this year. We have to get through closing the books. We have to get through preparing the unaudited actuals for you in September, and then the auditors have to come behind us and confirm all of those numbers. Okay, but let's just very quickly go through the variances there. So salaries and benefits, same thing, vacancies, other payroll costs, realigning budgets between different categories, books and supplies, again, budget realignment. Now, here's an interesting one. So services and other operating expenditures, sometimes called our 5,000 series. Even though it's a decrease of only 217,000, there's actually large increases in other areas. So utilities went down by more than that. We're seeing lower, we haven't figured that out yet. We still went ahead and budgeted 10% in the out years, like I mentioned. But there's also been an increase to the use of consultants and an increase in legal. There's been a decrease in travel and conferences, which is recognized in that same category because many of those costs were moved over to the restricted because we should always use those funds first. And then there's some other budget alignments, budget transfers between object codes. Capital outlay and other outgo, also very little change there. So that is the summary of the estimated actuals. So are we ready to finally move on to 25-26? Okay. So these are just two quick pie charts for you so that you can see how all of our expenditures, I know it was provided in a table before, but sometimes it's nice to see it graphically a little bit differently, right? Okay. And so you can see that where it says Fund 03, that's our unrestricted general fund. Salaries and benefits make up almost 82%. It's a little hard to see there in the middle, but it's almost 82% of our unrestricted general fund. And then on the restricted side, that's almost 72%. So the vast majority of our budget is for salaries and benefits. And that should not be surprising to any of us, right? We're in the education business. It takes people to educate our students. So that's just a quick summary of expenditures for you. I also wanted to include for you part of some of these things in this presentation. I want to make sure that when I, leave and start working up the hill, you all have all this information and are readily available, in space for you as you're making decisions for next year. But when we look at the cost of 1%, so if the board were to decide, as we start talking about compensation for our employees, it's important that for that any decisions that you make in that regard. What if you were to give that to all employee groups, 1% is $1.4 million. So just keep that in the back of your head. Obviously, you can all do math. If you give a 1%, it's 1.4. If you give it 2%, it's 2.8. If you were to give, let's say, a 2% raise, I just was doing some quick math earlier, today, we have to know what will that look like in the multi-year projection, and I'm going to, wrong clicker. I'm going to go back just for a second. So just so that you understand the impact of the budget, because a lot of times people will say, you have almost $40 million sitting in the ending fund balance. That's factual. That we're transparent about that. But look what happens to the ending fund balance. And so in that 2% example that I gave you in 27-28, that little cursor thing is covering most of it, but you can take my word, it says 5.29%. That actually goes down to about 1%, and then you don't meet your minimum reserves if you do nothing else. There's obviously other things that you can do, but I just want to make sure that you understand. I know it sounds like simple math, but I thought illustrating it might be helpful as well. Okay.
Ken, there's one quick question on
sure.
that slide where you had all the numbers.
Oh, the numbers.
So I noticed that
This one.
no, keep going. It was one of the yellow ones.
Oh, the multi-year.
Yeah, the multi-year.
Sorry about that. Went the wrong way.
So, I guess any one of those.
Okay.
So the LCFF revenue, so that's 154. Is that including the supplemental?
Yes.
Okay.
Supplemental concentration is unrestricted dollars.
Okay.
It just has to be tied to the written plan.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you.
It's interesting though, because you've been around a long time, right? So you remember back the categorical days when we were under revenue limit. And so we're also used to, like, the categoricals were in the restricted general fund. So we're used to those monies being there. So That's a great question.
Ms. Reigns, on the other revenue, are we including medical in the other revenue, the medical billing?
Yeah, let me actually, since we're right here,
And I don't know if you are prepared to share a comparison of the previous years to this year on the recovery from medical with, again, that strategic focus.
yeah, so I'm not prepared to present specific numbers. We have those, and I think you actually emailed them to the board. That's not your question, I know.
Yeah,
You
yes.
were hoping maybe
Yeah.
I had something
And I
for the
emailed them to the
public.
board, I
But it's
know
a
that.
lot bigger.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah. But that's a really great question, and I'm sorry that I missed highlighting that here with restricted. So, different than what Mr. Campos was talking about, asking where specifically are the supplemental and concentration revenue and expenditures housed, which is in the unrestricted general fund. Medi-Cal funding is housed within the Fund 06 or the restricted general fund. It's under state, okay, thank you. So you can see that our state, well, it's kind of hard to see. You can see that we're projecting $12.8 million in the budget in the out years compared to $22 million this year, but I don't want to tell you it's that much bigger, of a number. So, but Medi-Cal is, I want to say more than double. We had I'm going to use your term, we had a laser focus starting about 18 months ago. I think you mentioned even like when Ms. Stump was here, we would meet actually every Monday as a team and start looking at, there was new allowances put in with Medi-Cal for things that our counselors with their PPS credentials could also bill for that wasn't allowed previously. And so initially we weren't capturing, all of that. They actually do the billing and that sort of thing. And so we met with Mr. Al-Zubaydi and lots of other people and kind of put this plan into place. In fact, we were just talking today in cabinet about how Ms. Steinbeck is just so good at making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do so we can claim the maximum amount of revenue. Are you confirming this, Kelly?
Yes. 100%.
So great efforts on behalf of the district to increase our restricted there.
Right.
Okay. Let me see if I can get my presentations back lined up here. I also wanted to provide this just so that you had a historical sense of both what our COLA has been, going back to the inception of LCFF, and then the salary increases that we've provided to employees. I just wanted you to have this. I mean, you just facts for you. Oops, I keep clicking the wrong thing. All right, the next thing I wanted to show you is what is the impact on receiving COLA when we're in a declining enrollment district. Now we're always board, do you want me to stop or continue? Okay.
No, keep going.
Okay, so we need to understand that COLA, when that's provided to us, a lot of times people think, and I'm not saying this is wrong, they will think COLA should be an automatic pass-through to employees. But COLA is provided to us on almost all, sometimes less than almost all, of our revenue sources, right? So this is not our funding this year, this is just for because remember we're funded off of the prior year. But if we were funded on current year, and if we only had 9th through 12th grade students, so we're just kind of shrinking the mathematical equation for easy understanding. If we look at what we're getting as a base grant per ADA last year to me is now 24-25. I know we're not out of 24-25 times our ADA that we're funded at. We're getting $108 million. For next year, we'll add COLA, which is the 279. We run through that same calculation. That increase in funding is $901,000. So that 2.3% COLA is really only 0.83%. So that's just important to keep in mind. Every district in a declining enrollment district has their own specific COLA, if you will, because of the declining enrollment factor. So I just leave that with you, to keep in mind. Okay. We're next going to get to the summary of contributions. And so these are the funds that are contributed from the unrestricted general fund to the restricted general fund. Mainly special education and routine maintenance. Special education is the larger of the pot there. And so you can see the total special education contribution increases year after year because even when we're declining in enrollment, our special education population increases. You may remember a presentation I gave in March that showed the the increase in our special education population and the increase in our contributions were not quite, level, and so help. Help with that. But we are basing our projections in the budget based on the historical facts that we have and the trends there. Our contributions, if you look in 25-26, the budget year, are 29 million. 29.7, almost up about 4 million from the previous year, but then they go up significantly more in the out years because we are out of that COVID ADA relief dollars that we saved from 21-22 to offset some of this there. So that's just so that you understand the contributions. Oftentimes we'll hear things like, well, you could solve the deficit within your unrestricted general fund if you would just stop making a contribution to special education. Okay, well, I don't know how to do that. Help me know how to do that, because we have the special education teachers, we have to pay the paraeducators, that kind of thing. We have to make a contribution to routine maintenance. One, because the state requires us to, if we're going to participate in the state school facilities funding facilities program. But also we have to maintain our schools, of course, so there's a formula within the state budget for that, which is 3%. So that's where we are on contributions. Any questions there before we move on to a different area? Okay, we're hitting the home stretch here. Okay. I also wanted to highlight, going back to what we were talking about with COLA, so I wanted to highlight for you all of our new LCFF revenue for next year. This does include supplemental concentration. So, and again, we're funded off of prior year, okay? So we have $4 million new dollars in the LCFF category coming into the district. If you remember back from, I think it was like slide 12 or 13, step and column increases are projected to be $1.7 million. Health and welfare, health insurance increases, $958,000. STRS and PERS, for the first time, I think in my career, there's no increase there. There's actually a little bit of a decline because PERS is going down. But that leaves us with a remaining new revenue amount of almost $1.4 million. We then have to take out the cost of overstaffing that we talked about, the increase in the special education contribution, and now we're at a negative. So I put this in here because we had a lengthy conversation at second interim about where we are deficit spending, where specifically are we deficit spending, and the technical answer to where are we deficit spending is in the budget, and now we have to dive in, to why. But I also want to point out that everything I've shown you so far is not unique to Paris Union High School District. This will closely match any district our size that is declining in enrollment. So, but I don't say that from the perspective of don't worry about it. So I want to make that clear as well. So what we see here is a downward pressure on revenues and an upward pressure on expenditures. And so the expenditures are outpacing the increase in revenue. And that is the big overarching category of what's contributing to deficit spending, which we're going to get into more in a little bit as well. Okay. And then I just provided one more slide from School Services of California. And this is the average district.
I'm sorry, I was looking at there, I thought Miss Jamie, and I was, and I said, I want to wait for Miss Jamie to ask a small question to the board.
Oh, did you have your hand? And I missed
Yeah,
it? Oh, okay.
no.
Okay.
No, a small question. I think you are doing an excellent job. You are going a lot of depth,
Yes.
right? And I really appreciate that the board switched from the 15-minute requirement for presentations, that there was not enough time, right, to go over all of this. So I'm glad, and mostly with the two new board members. Do you want to continue, Ms. Range, to go in that detail, or kind of summarize it only and just go through that for time constraints?
I think we need to summarize it because don't we have another one still, CMI?
CMI is very short.
But yeah, so is a proposal to summarize it?
Summarize.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because we're still getting this email to us. right?
Summarize it?
We're still getting this
You
email.
still want to summarize. I just don't want later on, right, and you have the constitutional right of freedom of speech to say, right? But the fact that we asked for this info and we were not presented with the information. All right, so that is important to me because I want to be responsive when you said we want that information, we really want to understand it, and then we have the time constraint. I can do whatever you want here, but just with that understanding, right? With that understanding that if that comes out, hey,
And I'm of course
That's
willing
fine.
to do whatever the
Whatever, yeah, whatever.
But I
you-
will
you
say
want.
for a $200 million budget to allot me a shorter time than a smaller portion,
Yeah,
supplemental
you don't
concentration,
go into
but
that.
that's up to the
But we
board.
can
About how many more
propose,
slides do we have?
I've got 10 more minutes.
Your call.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay, 10
okay,
minutes.
so
All right,
you okay
10
with
minutes. 10 minutes, yeah.
it? Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate that, okay. Time
Keep it or
me,
we'll get
would
to
you
it.
please, Nathan? So I'm not going to go over this, you can see this as an illustrative example, regardless of what year we're looking at with a COLA, that increased costs are outpacing revenue. So when you study that later, look at that from an ongoing basis at the state level. This is the part I really wanted to get into, so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to get into deficit spending. So again, we had a lengthy conversation at second interim, and Dr. Rouse asked me to provide some of this additional information. And again, all of us in this room, I heard Lindsay say it most recently, are educators. That applies to me too. And so I want to try to do some justice in explaining deficit spending. So what is deficit spending? In school finance, deficit spending happens when school district's expenses exceed the revenue in a given year. I mentioned that at second interim. The district is spending more money than it's receiving, which means the district is using up savings or reserves to cover that gap. Pretty simple, right? Why does deficit happen? So remember in second interim, the question kept being asked, where, and I kept answering what and why, because you have to understand what and why. So deficit spending happens when there's rising costs like salaries and benefits and pensions and all of those things that we talked about, reduced or unpredictable state funding, like the COLA, the volatile COLA that I talked about, 1% less this year than we projected last year, or we had as a projection, one-time expenses, enrollment and ADA declines, and then again, those downward pressures on revenues and the upward pressures on expenditures. So is deficit spending always bad? Not necessarily, and it's important to keep that in mind. Temporary deficit spending, so for planned one-time expenditures, that can be okay. It's when you have ongoing deficit spending with no plan to balance the budget, that's risky and it can lead to financial trouble. It can even lead to state intervention like fiscal crisis, and we've seen that happen in other districts. So then we have to move on to what I was talking about in March, is what is a structural budget deficit. That's when our ongoing revenues are not enough to cover our ongoing expenditures, and that's the situation we face in Paris Union High School District. And I'll say again, we are not unlike most other districts in the state because of that lower funding. It's a chronic imbalance that doesn't go away on its own. District staff, and most importantly the board, are going to have to make some decisions to solve the deficit spending, and the sooner you solve it, the easier it will be to solve. Okay, so if you don't remember me saying anything at all in 19 years, remember that. The sooner you take action, the easier it will be. The gap between revenues and expenditures widens each year, creating that structural deficit. So how do we address deficit spending? We have to recognize that there's two sides of the equation, okay? There's revenues and then there's expenditures. So how do we address the revenue side of the equation, i.e. how do we increase revenue? Well, we talked about this. We can increase enrollment and ADA. That's our Operation Enrollment Recovery, our Operation Attendance Recovery. We can advocate for increased funding, base grant increases, COLA, that sort of thing. We can seek grants and alternative funding sources. So that would be one side of the equation, because then we would be increasing our revenue. The other side of the equation are the expenditures. And so we need to review our programs and the cost effectiveness, right, of all of those programs and align those with student outcome. We can't keep doing, and I'm not saying we are, but we can't keep doing things that aren't producing measurable outcomes, right? We have to regularly evaluate program impact. Are we getting the results for the investment? Lindsay can stand up here and talk about all the wonderful things she talked about, but we have to evaluate all of that program impact. We have to look at all of our contracts and services. Where are we paying consultants, and where are there possible savings, other expenditures. Maybe there's some things that we can postpone. There's also temporary or one-time solutions, such as using our restricted general fund and or supplemental concentration funds where allowable, of course. So we could spend down any carryover there to free up unrestricted general fund dollars. That's a strategy as well. And then the last 2 points here is you all should consider aligning staffing levels with enrollment trends to avoid overstaffing. Also to review new or originally unbudgeted positions. So those last two bullets is what I have for you on the next slide here, and this is what Dr. Rao specifically asked me to list. And this is not everything. You're not going to take this number and tie it to a deficit spending number because it's all the factors that I mentioned. But what are some big ticket items that are in our budget or have been included in our budget? And I am not standing up here saying they don't need to be in our budget. I'm just telling you that they are. Okay, I want to make that very clear. So in 23-24, there were a number of things that were added to the budget in the budget process, or at the last minute essentially, because of the timing of the budget cycle. We increased all of our campus supervisors from 5 to 8 hours. There's a cost for that. We did a compensation study with CSEA and gave some increases based on that, as with our management and unrepresented employees. And so that was in the 23-24. And once that's added in, those things stay in the multi-year projections. Last year in July, after the budget was adopted, 2 additional technology TOSAs were added. That contributes to deficit spending. It's one of the variables. And then those 8 teachers that we talked about as well. Okay.
So just to add, and that's actually what I wanted to get to that one, and I think what you were asking also,
Yeah.
Mr.
Do
Garcia.
you want me to go?
Just go to the point, to that one, right?
Yes.
So what I would recommend to the board, and from now on, every decision attach how much it's going to cost, that decision. Because you asked very valid reasons 2 months ago, why are we deficit spending? And I think, and I said, yes, we want to find it. I don't know if you remember, I was talking back and forth with Ms. Raines. We need to find out that, right? Because that's a valid question from the board. So there it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So whenever we make a decision, what is the cost for the decision, right? It's not only about just making the decision, but you say how much is going to be there. Thank you.
So these are factors that make the deficit spending worse, is another way, to say it. I'm not saying they are bad decisions, I want to make that clear, but these are just some things that we can concretely say, as well as everything else in the presentation, the cost of step and column as compared to revenue, that sort of thing.
Now,
But those aren't the only. Never mind.
Well, I have a question. So I know that we show the teachers that are overstaffed, and I know for me, what I constantly have heard, just talking to different people, that we are overstaffed at the district level, at the district office level. And so I think that's something that we definitely need to look into, because I think there's a lot of positions that are out. It's interesting because there's a lot of positions that I think we need administratively, and maybe others that we don't. And so I think we really need to, when something like this and this conversation is going to come up, it really needs to be organizationally. Because obviously the higher end salaries that we have at the district office clip away at that deficit a lot quicker than, moving a couple classified employees or letting go of classified employees. So I think anytime we have that conversation, it definitely needs to be included there, because I know people have looked at our kind of structure administratively, and they say you guys have kind of a lot of people, in positions that, for your size district, I mean, we have some positions that equate to school districts that are twice our size. And so I think that's one of the things that I think that needs to be part of the conversation. Understanding that I know if we're overstaffed in teachers, that's something we can take care of and figure that out. But, the one thing that I know sits in mind is like those teachers are working with students. And it was kind of like our conversation earlier about the LCAP. They're working with students on a daily basis. They show up, they've got faces, they've got parents to answer to. Whereas, and no offense to district office personnel, but it's just one of those things where we don't know their everyday, day-to-day, how, what I do know is that they're not facing students every day and parents and, kind of the environment that goes on at a site level. So I know for me, whenever any of this is brought up, I definitely think we need to look at the administrative costs that we have, and are we running as lean as we could, or do we have some positions that we don't necessarily know? We never want to get rid of any position, but at the same time, we have to be wise in the decisions that we make, knowing, hey, you know what? We can remove, if it's 3 district office positions as opposed to, 4 teachers, then, those teachers are working every day with, hundreds of students. And I know for us, the decision would probably be, well, let's remove administrative positions. They're at a higher cost. There's less of them than, the teachers or classified staff that's there. So I know that's, and I don't know if your sentiment is kind of along that, but All I know is I know when this gets brought up and shown that way, we understand that. But, I think it would be, as we move forward and we look at deficit spending, that we include all of our stuff. And the one thing I will say, and I know they mentioned it on the state side, and I know everybody's deficit spending, but, for the state to come in, I mean, we have to be like really, really bad. And I think, because sometimes I think it puts fear into, some of the board members, or maybe even the newer ones, to think that we're going to get taken over. It's like, no, I mean, you got to be like bad for the
not
state to
needing
come in.
reserves.
Right. So,
But what
anyway,
you talked
go
about
ahead,
is a
Nicole.
good point. It's what I talked about on the we have to look at all expenditures.
Right.
I completely
Including
agree.
programs that don't work.
Yes.
Right.
I completely agree with Mr. Campos, and to be responsive to what he's saying, I don't know if it will be with you or Mr. Andrade, can we make a study on the staff that we have at the district level? So we have data-based, research-based, right? Because I understand that there can be comments from some people, oh, we are just overstaffed there. Because if that is the case, we will act upon that, Mr. Campos.
Yeah.
Right? But we need to have evidence based on numbers, based on research. I don't know who of the two can help me with that.
I already have it on my notes.
You already have it in your notes?
Yeah, we got it.
Oh,
We got it.
okay.
I
Yeah,
got it.
because of the time constraints, let's email that to them, if you can send it to me, and I will email it to you. Because that is an important thing. And just to clarify, we will never leave students without teachers. When we are talking about overstaff, that means that we don't have enough students for those teachers to teach. Am I correct, Mr. Andrade? Is that
Yeah.
Okay, so overstaff means that those teachers are not working with them. Proof of that is that the teachers that we were overstaffed this year, they were at the IEPs, because we had to find something for them to do. They were not in the classroom teaching the students. And that is another thing that we can talk later about that. But just to clarify that, he has an excellent point, and we will address it on that.
If I could be a little more specific, when you guys give us that information, could you make us like a diagram?
Yeah.
So we could break it down, who's in charge of the department, everyone, how it trickles down. That would be a lot more easier for us. And what they do, really.
And not only that, but the number, if this reasonable number, because if we have too many, we are going to cut it down. Yeah, we are going to reduce it. And we already-
maybe shift positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't wanna
we
say get
already
rid
did
of
one, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
We already did one, we didn't renew one of the assistant superintendents, right? Because that is our commitment. And we are committed to do really strategic decisions for the best of our students. But let's send that to,
Just for clarification, we sent the organizational chart for every.
That's what I meant.
Right.
What else from those organizational charts does the board want?
Well, I think a comparative analysis as to
Well, yeah,
like,
that's- yeah.
yeah, I mean, because I know that we have, when we saw that, I mean, there's just a bunch of names, you know what I mean? And you just don't know,
How are you trying to connect the
Yeah.
dots on
yeah.
which one really affects
When I was reading
students?
those charts, I think everyone made it to their own understanding and their own, how they see it in their mind. Maybe we can just make them all the same, everyone made their chart how they think their brain works. And so it's hard to read it because it's like so different, they're all so different. So maybe we can make them all the same and kind of same language that we can all read.
How they all
It's
fit
an
together.
excellent point. One
Yes.
format.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
one
Yes,
format.
one format, there you go.
One format plus, I think that is not enough, because we are telling them how many staff members are there. But the point is, how do we determine that we are overstaffed?
And their salaries
Mr.
attached.
Campos mentioned something really important, a comparison, right? So we can say HR overall, one assistant sub or chief human resource officer, one director, and so forth. We have 11,000 students. Another district with 20,000, they have this number. So they can have an idea, and me too, right? In order to make a decision, are we really overstaffed with this? Okay. So what is fair is fair. This is an excellent point, and I really want to address Mr. Campos' point on this case.
Also, how do they affect the students? What the outcome is to the end result of affecting the students on their, so.
Well, and I know, like on the TOSAs, I know that a lot of times when we create these positions, it's kind of goes back to that question. You know, it's multi-tiered because you have. So if we have a lot of young teachers, and the way that technology and education is, with the lesson planning and everything going on, there's a lot. They're drinking out of a fire hose, just like you guys are. And so, you know, having the TOSAs there to make sure that they get what they need, because the last thing we want is to have teachers come into the profession and not have the support that they need, and then leave and then be discouraged. And so, you know, obviously, that pool. I mean, obviously, our students are shrinking. But it's our new teachers that are shrinking. I mean, people are not coming into this profession, and they're not going to now. If you get hired now, you got to work till you're 67. You know what I mean? Mine was 60. You know, before that was 55 or 61 and a half. So things are changing, and sometimes and that's why we have to look at all these decisions, because, you know, I honestly believe that the support for those TOSAs for the tech is extremely important, because we're so technological. Have we not been so technological? You could argue, you know, we don't really need that, you know, sometimes on the TOSA side. But, yeah, I mean, obviously we have to look at a lot of things. And so I thank you for at least bringing up the information there to give us ideas as to where to start. But, you know, we can expand that and then figure it out from there.
So you're welcome. I'm now 15 minutes into my 10 minutes, but I did a small portion of talking for 15 minutes. So to wrap it up, there is not one answer to where we are deficit spending. And I hope that that's clear. It's the function of the whole. All expenditures exceeding all revenue, and there's a lot of elements and a lot of conversations to be had. And we have our direction. You'll have access to this presentation. You can read it at night, let it resonate, come back to Dr. Rouse with any ideas, you know, that we have. And just as Lindsay said, I'm going to go to the last slide, I promise. Just as Lindsay said in her presentation, this is a living, breathing document that we can continue to change as the direction changes when we find what that sort of sweet spot is for what works well.
Thank you, Ms. Raines. And one last question for the board. Are you satisfied with this presentation in terms of what you have been asking, what you wanted to know?
Yep.
And if not, if there is something else, please let us know, and we will work on that
Yes,
to present that to you. Trustee Anaya, anything pending that you would like to?
My mind's just kind of going, but I don't work at the school. I work at a pharmacy, but I'm assuming the students are considered a stakeholders,
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, they're included in the.
just like our customers are. And I'm really, really good at my job. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. I can handle patients like there's no tomorrow. But when they start pulling hours and when there's less techs, even I get overwhelmed. And the first people I take it out on are the customers. And it's sad to say, because they're the ones that I'm supposed to be there to serve them. But it's so overwhelming that it's like you get so impatient. They start asking questions, and I'm like, I don't have time for your 10 questions. Do you want it? Yes or no? Move on my way. And I'm just like, I'm seeing my mind go like this with full-grown adults.
Yeah.
I can only imagine teachers and students that have the right to ask questions, that are there to learn. They're not there just prescription go. So I would just say, I saw that, and it's true. Like, I know that the district has people. I know that they have jobs, and everyone needs to do something, and everyone's there for something. But I would just love to see that's not the first thing to go for, is cutting teachers, because that's as a technician, and I'm working with adults. I'm working with people that are sick, but these are students that are there to learn. They're there to ask questions, and I can only just imagine a teacher, like, I have 30, 35 students. Like, I don't have time to take your individual questions, and that would be nice too. Even with me, I have 5 kids, and when they're asking me questions, I'm like, I'm 1 person and you guys are 5. You know, I can only imagine. So I would just like to not see that always being, that being the number one cut. You're going to cut teachers because it is a hard job. I can only imagine. I'm sure most of you guys were teachers or have been there. And as we get further into the depths of spending, inflation, it's I can't imagine your job having to figure out these numbers and how are we going to do it.
And it's hard when 80% of the budget is salaries and benefits, but everything you said is still
It's
also
true.
correct.
Yeah, so it's you know, and at work I don't have a voice. I'm just an employee. But here, and I know I'm not a loud voice or the only voice. I just would like to just put that input in, and I know you guys already know everything, and not know everything, but know that teachers are important,
Yes.
but it just I'm just connecting, and I'm like, oh man, that sucks. Like, I would love to spend time with patients and explain to them why their medication is not covered, explain what the next step is with a smile on my face, but I just don't have the time. I have 10 people in line, I have the phone ringing, I have drive-through, it's crazy. So I can only imagine the teachers with students and questions and arguments and testosterone and estrogen and all that going through a classroom. So I give you guys all a round of applause. Everyone, I know you guys all work hard, but it's just, you gotta amazing how you do it.
Thank you, Ms. Anaya. Trustee Hall, anything that we can do, anything else to answer any questions or
No,
something that
you
you
know,
would like to know?
I know I raised all those questions because one thing I didn't know.
Yeah.
I
They
don't.
were
We
great
don't know what we
questions.
don't know,
Yep.
and I have to be that person to ask those questions. Why? And when my customers ask, I have to be able to answer those questions just like Miss Naya with hers. So it is, a tough job for us because we don't want to let anybody go. On that kind of thing on spending, but like it's getting that resources to us on programs that are failing, but we're still using them. It's just all that kind of stuff. So breaking it down like this, appreciate it, and it's an overall eye opener. So appreciate that.
Trustee Garcia, anything that you would like us to
Not
present?
to add anything, I do want to thank you all for your hard work and make sure the whole team and everybody who participated knows we appreciate it. We know it's a lot. I like to review it before and after. I know we've been talking about these numbers too, but I think one thing that we should also be discussing is constant overwatch of what's working and what's not working, so we don't have to end up in a position where what do we cut if we're deficit spending or we're facing a financial crisis? So we would already know. We could adjust here. We could put someone here who has skills over here, and they would be more successful and increase revenue or whatever it may be. But I think as long as we're constantly looking at every department, what's working and what's not working, I think we'll be okay.
Trustee Campos.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just
So try.
it's just constantly looking at what our priorities are because you could have said that right out of COVID, mental health would have been it, but as we move away from that, we just got to look at a lot of different things, and I think the more that we have conversations, and the good thing about teachers and administrative staff is they're versatile because they might be district administrators now, but they were teachers and they have ideas, so they do understand kind of how we can morph and figure things out. But I think it'll be a collective kind of team effort. I always try to stay at least positive in these situations. Think, okay, well, let's hope for the best. I know you said hope's not a plan, but at the same time, I don't want to be stressed out. I know we have tough decisions to make, but at the same time, I think a lot of the things that we have in place, are going to generate revenue, and the more we go with that, I think that the better off we'll be. And the other thing too, you just got to, hopefully everybody has a sense of humor because, especially teachers, you have to. You couldn't survive with that because sometimes some kids ask some things, and I know they say there's never a dumb question, but sometimes I'm like, I might not say it, but I'm like, I'll just look at them. Like, do you really want me to answer that? But anyways.
And lastly, Trustee Garcia, you raised something really important about identifying programs or situations or strategies that are not working. We have the same kind of thinking. The way that we are setting up, and Dr. Egan's has already worked on that, is at every school, they are going to do their allocations, but they are going to identify a goal. This is a specific goal. We are going to increase, let's say, hypothetically speaking, they decide to increase 2% of the attendance for this year, and this is the allocation. How are you going to use it? How are you going to monitor that? And then throughout the year, we are going to be making kind of a testing, like a thermometer. How are you doing here, the first quarter, the second quarter? If we are talking about a studentship in Mr. Hall, analyzing the Ds and Fs after the first progress report, after the second progress report, and what's going on with the allocation. We are investing money here. What are we getting for that money, for that investment? So it's exactly what you are doing. So thank you for mentioning that.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Egas already, you share the form, right, with me. Probably I want to send it, if you can send it again so I can share it with our board members.
Thank you.
So you can see how we are going to focus on. It's a monitoring, but we are not telling them, right? Mm-hmm. They make the decision on where they are going to be focusing on. Obviously, everything is going to be following the LCAP and the 5 pillars of our district, our priorities. Mm-hmm. We cannot accomplish everything in 1 year.
Right.
But they are going to select 2 or 3 goals. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. 2 or 3 goals, and then they're going to be getting our support and our monitoring on what they decide.
See, this is why the principal should have been here to hear everything we just said over this whole evening. They could hear where we're trying to go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and that is an excellent point. Unfortunately, we're at the end
No,
of
I
the
know,
year,
I know,
and they're
I know.
getting ready for graduations and all of
That's
that.
understandable.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for your understanding.
Thank
All
you.
right, so thank you again. I know it was a long presentation. It is, like I said, the adopted budget, $200 million, but I felt it was important for you to know everything that goes in because you've got important discussions and decisions,
We
tonight.
agree.
So
And we had cookies to help us. So
you have
it worked
cookies.
out.
And I want to point out,
We
because
did
I'm a
this
math
slide.
person, I'm at
Yeah,
a minute
she did
20
that.
with my co-presenter. Ms. Chavez went longer than that in total.
That's right. No, just kidding. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we clap?
That wasn't the bug.
No, it wasn't the
There
bug
was
this
a lot
time.
of mosquitoes.
This time it was a slide.
No flies.
Okay, are there any public comments? Thank you very much, ma'am. The 2025-2026 district budget public hearing is now closed at 6:55 p.m. And there's a motion by Trustee Garcia and a second by Trustee Hall to receive the 2025-2026 district budget for review and consideration. Seeing there's no discussion, please vote. Upon a vote being taken, the vote was 4 in favor and 1 absent. And 5.1, adjournment. The special meeting of the Board of Trustees for June 2nd, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Seeing no discussion, please vote. On the vote being taken, the vote was 4 in favor and 1 absent. And this meeting is adjourned at 6:56.